So today I want to talk about a personal shift, really. It's about communication, about how I started to think about my own words with a lot more intention. This isn't about giving advice or laying down rules. It's more of a reflection on the places our words go and how they survive there.
It all kind of starts with this one quiet moment. You've probably been there. You say something that feels perfectly clear, maybe even just a simple fact, but the response you get has nothing to do with what you said. It's all about your tone. And just like that, the whole conversation gets derailed. And you're just left with this strange feeling, this sense of distortion, right? The meaning you intended just seems to evaporate. And in its place is this whole other story, a narrative you don't even recognize. It's not about who's right or wrong, it's just this fundamental, confusing breakdown.
Well, that experience got me thinking. It was a real moment of discernment for me. I started to notice that in certain situations, spoken words just become unstable. They can lose their shape, their original intent. They can be a really fragile way to get a point across.
So what makes them so fragile? Well, a few things. First off, tone is totally subjective. What sounds direct to you might sound harsh to someone else. Then there's memory, which, let's be honest, is not a reliable recording device. We often remember the feeling of a conversation way more than the actual words. And, if there's a power imbalance, what was said can literally be reinterpreted by the person in charge. And of course, emotion. It can be projected onto the most neutral statement and completely change its meaning.
And this is really the heart of it. Spoken words? Poof. They disappear the second you say them. They become these fragile memories filtered through everyone's individual lens. But written words, they stick around. They persist. They're stable. They create a point of reference that we can all go back to.
So I made a change, a really deliberate shift in my own practice. I started choosing to communicate in writing more often. And look, this wasn't about avoiding people or shutting down conversations. It was about choosing a channel that actually preserves meaning, a move toward clarity for everyone.
I started to think of this as a kind of channel sovereignty. It's really just the idea that you have the right to choose the format for your own communication. I mean, we get this concept when it comes to our physical space or our digital privacy, so why not with our own words?
So, what does this look like in practice? Sometimes it's as simple as using a neutral phrase like this one. For accuracy and clarity, I prefer written communication. See how that works? It's not personal, it's not a fight. It just refocuses everything on a shared goal, making sure we understand each other. It's practical.
And this isn't some strange or unusual thing to do. Just think about any high-risk field. Lawyers, engineers, pilots, people in compliance or healthcare, they all rely on written records. They have to. Because when the stakes are really high, you absolutely cannot afford ambiguity. Clarity is everything.
Of course, when you start to make this shift, it can be misunderstood. The quiet that comes with choosing your words carefully, with writing them down, well, that quiet can sometimes be seen as something negative. But it helps to reframe it, to see it not as aggression, but as precision.
This really lays it out. What someone might feel is aggression is actually a deep commitment to being precise. What might look like you're avoiding something is actually you searching for total clarity. And what can feel like a punishment is really just restraint. It's a choice not to use a form of communication that you know is unstable.
So why would anyone push back against this? Well, sometimes ambiguity is useful to some people. A written record makes it really hard to reframe or misinterpret a conversation later. It stops those "you said, I didn't say" arguments cold. And it takes away the leverage that comes from things like tone policing.
So after making this change, after stewarding my words in this way, what was the outcome? Honestly, the result was peace.
First, there's the peace that just comes from preserving your original meaning. It's that quiet confidence of knowing your words are there, exactly as you intended them, safe from being twisted.
Then there's the piece of reducing all that distortion. With fewer misunderstandings, with less misremembering, the signal gets so much clearer. And all that noise, all that conflict, just starts to fade.
And finally, there's this really deep peace that comes from protecting the truth of a situation. When you create that stable, factual anchor for a conversation, it's just much harder for the actual truth to get lost or worn away.
So I've come to see this practice as a kind of structural intelligence. It's not about being weak or avoidant or scared. It's actually a thoughtful, mature choice. It's choosing the communication channel that best protects the integrity of what you're trying to say, one that can't be easily rewritten by emotion.
And that really just leaves me with this one final thought. What if clarity is actually a form of peace? What if the best way to reduce conflict isn't just about changing what we say, but about being really intentional with the structure we choose to say it in? Maybe clarity itself is a kind of peace.